the number that changed everything. Rick Ross spent years building the image of a boss who could survive anything, but one album just put that image under a microscope. Set in Stone was supposed to remind hip-hop why Ross once stood near the top of the game. Instead, the conversation exploded around one uncomfortable question. Are we watching a legend play the long game? Or are we watching the beginning of a real commercial decline? The numbers became the headline before the music even had time to breathe. Reports circulating around the project placed its opening performance far below the massive first-week totals. Ross delivered during the strongest years of his career, and the second those figures hit social media, the jokes started flying. Critics called the album a flop. Fans argued the industry had changed. Others pointed towards streaming, physical sales, and the possibility that first-week numbers no longer tell the whole story. Then 50 Cent entered the conversation, and once that happened, this stopped being only about album sales. 50 saw the numbers being discussed online and immediately turned them into ammunition against his longtime rival. The trolling reopened one of hip-hop's most famous feuds and placed Ross in a brutal position. Defend the album, defend his relevance, and defend a legacy that stretches back nearly 2 decades all at the same time. But Ross wasn't backing down. His message was simple: this is a long game. He pointed towards streaming momentum, loyal supporters, physical products, and the belief that great music should not be judged by 1 week on a chart. In Ross's eyes, Set in Stone was not a surrender. It was another chapter in a career that has already survived multiple eras of hip-hop. But there is a problem Ross cannot ignore. This is the same artist who once opened with enormous numbers, scored multiple, no, 1 albums, built Maybach Music Group into a major force, and made luxury rap feel larger than life. So when the numbers suddenly look dramatically smaller, people are naturally going to ask what changed. And the answer may involve much more than music, because waiting behind the 50 Cent jokes is an even bigger name: Drake. So, is Rick Ross simply experiencing what happens when a veteran artist enters a different stage of his career? Or did years of public beef, shifting fan loyalty, and choosing sides in hip-hop finally come with a price? Where are you watching from right now? Drop your city or country in the comments. If you think Rick Ross can still turn this album into a long-term win, comment un. If you think the numbers are a warning sign that his era is fading, comment deux. And subscribe to the channel, because the Drake connection makes this story much deeper than it first appears. Rick Ross refuses the flop label. Rick Ross heard the noise, saw the jokes, watched the numbers get turned into memes, and instead of retreating, he doubled down. His argument was not that the conversation never happened. It was that people were judging the story too early. Ross kept returning to one phrase: the long game. From his point of view, first-week numbers are only one frame in a much bigger picture. Streaming continues after the opening week. Physical products can arrive later. Touring, licensing, merchandise, performances, and catalog activity can all extend the life of a project far beyond 7 days. That is why Ross appeared determined to separate his definition of success from the way social media wanted to define it. And that distinction matters, because the internet loves a clean winner and a clean loser. A high number becomes proof that an artist is still powerful. A low number becomes proof that the artist is finished. But real careers rarely move that simply. Ross has survived long enough to understand that he has seen the industry move from CDs to downloads, from downloads to streaming, and from traditional promotion to an era where one viral clip can control the entire conversation around an album. So when critics compared Set in Stone directly to releases from his commercial peak, Ross pushed back against the idea that the comparison told the whole story. Still, the defense creates another question. If the long game is the strategy, why did the short-term conversation become so damaging so quickly? Part of the answer may be that the music never controlled the rollout. Instead, the headlines did. Every time Ross appeared in public, another name seemed to enter the conversation. 50 Cent, Drake, old rivals, old arguments, old grudges. And the more those stories grew, the less attention stayed on the actual songs. That may be the real danger here. Ross can survive a lower opening week. What is harder to survive is a release where the audience remembers the beef more clearly than the album. And that is exactly where Drake becomes impossible to ignore. The Drake factor, the most controversial theory surrounding Rick Ross, was never just about 50 Cent, it was about Drake. Some commentators began arguing that Ross may have damaged his own commercial position by publicly turning against an artist whose fanbase overlaps with almost every corner of mainstream hip-hop. The theory was simple. If part of Ross's audience also listens heavily to Drake, then forcing fans into an emotional pick, a side environment could hurt Ross more than it hurts Drake. That does not prove Drake caused anything, but it explains why the theory became so powerful. Hip-hop fandom has changed. Listeners are no longer just buying records. They are participating in online communities, defending artists in comment sections, choosing sides in beefs, reposting clips, and sometimes treating every chart result like a scoreboard. In that environment, loyalty becomes currency. And Drake owns one of the largest fan ecosystems in modern rap. That is why the argument surrounding Ross became bigger than whether one diss was funny or whether one response went viral. The deeper question became whether Ross accidentally challenged an audience that once overlapped with his own. For years, Ross benefited from being connected to the center of mainstream rap. He worked with major stars, appeared on records with enormous reach, and built his identity around being part of hip-hop's luxury class. Drake was part of that same ecosystem. Then the relationship changed. Suddenly, fans who once had no reason to choose between them were being pushed into opposing camps. Some observers claimed that this shift could explain weaker interest. Others argued that blaming an algorithm or Drake's fan base gives too much power to one rivalry and ignores bigger issues like promotion, age, changing listening habits, and the natural decline that almost every veteran artist eventually faces. That disagreement is what makes the story so compelling. Maybe Drake had an effect, maybe he did not. But the fact that people believe the effect is possible reveals something important about modern hip-hop. Perception can move almost as fast as music, and once perception turns against an artist, every number becomes evidence. For Rick Ross, that means the next comparison is unavoidable. Not Ross versus Drake, Rick Ross today versus Rick Ross at his peak. From Billboard dominance to today. To understand why the reaction around Set in Stone became so intense, you have to remember what Rick Ross once represented. There was a period when his presence felt unavoidable. His albums opened big. His records dominated clubs and radio. His voice became one of the most recognizable sounds in luxury rap. Maybach Music Group developed into a serious movement, and Ross was not simply another rapper releasing projects. He looked like an executive building an empire in real time. That history changed the expectations forever. When an artist has already reached the top, people stop judging the new work like it belongs to a normal career. Every release gets compared to the biggest moment. That is exactly what happened here. Fans look back at the eras of Port of Miami, Thrilla, Deeper Than Rap, God Forgives, I Don't, and Mastermind. They remember the no debuts, the stronger first week totals, the larger cultural presence, and the sense that Ross could drop a project and immediately command attention. Then they looked at the current conversation. That contrast became brutal. But there is a danger in comparing different eras too, literally. The music industry Ross dominated in the late 2000s and early 2010s is not the same business that exists now. Streaming has changed how albums are consumed. Attention spans are shorter. Release schedules move faster. Young audiences discover artists through short-form clips instead of traditional album campaigns. Veteran rappers are competing not only with new music, but with an entirely different system. So maybe the fall in numbers says less about Ross, losing all relevance, and more about how difficult it is to maintain peak-level commercial dominance across 2 decades. Still, legends are judged by legendary standards, and Ross created those standards himself. That is why every disappointing number hits harder. The question is no longer whether he has had a successful career. That answer is obvious. The question is whether his current strategy is protecting that legacy, or slowly making people remember the arguments more than the accomplishments. And nobody understands how to weaponize that kind of perception better than 50 Cent, the beef that never really died. If Rick Ross had hoped the conversation around his album would stay focused on music, 50 Cent was probably the worst possible person to enter the picture. Their rivalry has survived eras, platforms, business moves, and countless headlines. And that is exactly why one joke about sales can carry so much weight. 50 does not troll Ross like a random critic. He trolls him with history behind every punchline. When the album numbers began circulating, 50 immediately treated them like proof that an old argument had finally been settled. The message was not simply that one album underperformed. The message was that Ross had finally become vulnerable enough for the old rivalry to look different. Ross responded by attacking 50's own business moves and public projects, and just like that, the album disappeared behind the feud. This is the trap. Both men are successful outside music. Both have built brands that extend beyond records. Both know exactly how to generate headlines. So when they attack each other, the conflict becomes more entertaining than the original subject. That may help engagement, but it can also hurt the product being promoted. Ross might believe that responding keeps his name in the conversation. And technically, it does. But what kind of conversation? If people click because they want to hear what he said about 50 Cent, then leave without playing. Set in stone. The attention may not be converting into music consumption. That is the difference between visibility and momentum. 50 Cent understands that better than almost anybody in entertainment. He has turned trolling into a marketing tool for years. He can create a viral moment without needing the moment to sell an album. Ross has a different challenge. He was trying to promote a new body of work while simultaneously fighting old wars. And every time he answered one rival, another headline grew larger than the project. That is why this feud matters beyond entertainment. It reveals what may have been the biggest strategic mistake of the entire rollout. The music was competing with the drama created by the artist himself. Did the drama kill the rollout? A strong album rollout tells the audience exactly what to pay attention to. With Set in Stone, that focus became blurry. Instead of a clean campaign built around singles, visuals, production stories, collaboration, and the meaning behind the album, much of the public discussion became attached to arguments involving other rappers. That is dangerous, because attention is limited. Every Drake headline occupies space that could have belonged to a song. Every 50 Cent response occupies space that could have belonged to a music video. Every viral beef clip gives the audience another reason to talk about Rick Ross without actually talking about Set in Stone. That does not mean controversy can never help an album. Hip-hop has always used competition, tension, and rivalry as part of promotion. But controversy only works when it pushes people back toward the music. Here, the opposite may have happened. The drama became the destination. Some fans appeared more interested in what Ross would say next than what record they should replay. Interviews became opportunities to ask about rivals. Clips spread because of insults, not necessarily because of bars from the album. That creates a strange situation for an artist. You can be highly visible while your music feels invisible. And for a veteran like Ross, that is especially costly because he already has a recognizable identity. He does not need to prove that he can generate attention. He needs to prove that his new music deserves sustained attention. A tighter rollout might have looked very different. Lead with one undeniable single. Build visuals around the luxury world Ross has mastered for years. Show studio footage. Explain the production choices. Use his business empire as part of the story. Remind audiences why the Ross lifestyle once felt cinematic. Then let the album arrive as the center of the moment. Instead, the center kept moving. And when the center moves too often, audiences do not know what they are supposed to remember. That problem becomes even more serious when the conversation moves from streaming numbers to something far more visible: empty seats. The tour question. Album sales can be debated. Streaming can be explained, but live demand is harder to hide. That is why online discussion around Rick Ross's tour became another pressure point in the story. Clips and screenshots circulated, showing unsold seats at certain dates, along with promotional discounts that critics quickly used as evidence that the problem extended beyond one album. The narrative became simple. If the album is struggling, and the tour is struggling, then the decline must be real. But once again, the reality is more complicated. Ticket sales depend on venue size, market, pricing, timing, promotion, local competition, and how early the show is being judged. A screenshot of available seats does not automatically tell the full story. Still, perception does not wait for context. If fans repeatedly see posts saying tickets are not moving, that idea can become part of the brand around the tour before the final results are even known. That is the dangerous part. Commercial weakness can become contagious as a narrative. People do not only ask whether they personally want to attend, they begin asking whether anybody else wants to attend. And in entertainment, momentum often creates more momentum. Ross still has advantages many artists would love to have. He has decades of recognizable records. He has a catalog built for live performance. He has a larger-than-life personality and an audience that remembers multiple eras of his career. But nostalgia alone cannot carry every room forever. A veteran artist has to give the audience a reason to believe the current moment matters. That may require more than simply announcing a tour beside a new album. It may require storytelling, a 20-year celebration, a carefully curated set, strong supporting acts, exclusive visuals, a clear reason why seeing Rick Ross now is different from seeing him 5 years ago. Because the real issue is not whether Ross can still perform. The real issue is whether the current campaign makes fans feel urgency, and that same question applies to the album itself. Forget the sales for a moment. Is Set in Stone actually good? Is Set in Stone actually a bad album? This is where the internet conversation starts getting unfair. A disappointing number does not automatically make disappointing music. And if you remove the sales debate, the Drake argument, the 50 Cent trolling, and the tour discussion, Set in Stone still has to be judged like an album. That means asking a completely different set of questions. Does the production fit Rick Ross? Are there records worth replaying? Does the album sound focused? Does Ross still have the presence that made his best work memorable? The answer is more balanced than the flop label suggests. The project contains moments that fit the Ross formula extremely well. Polished production, luxury imagery, heavy drums, soulful textures, and the deep commanding delivery that has carried his music for years. When Ross is locked into that sound, he still sounds convincing. The bigger problem is consistency. The album appears to lose momentum as it moves deeper into the track list. Some records feel less essential, and the project can begin to sound longer than necessary. That matters because modern listeners are ruthless with pacing. A strong 12-song album can feel powerful. A longer album with several tracks people skip can make the strongest records feel weaker, simply because the experience becomes diluted. That may be the real artistic criticism. Not that Ross suddenly forgot how to rap, not that every song failed, but that the project could have been sharper. Imagine the strongest records concentrated into a tighter track list, supported by a rollout that focused almost entirely on music. The entire conversation might have looked different. That is why calling the album a total disaster misses the point. The more interesting question is whether Ross still knows exactly what his audience wants from him. Because if he does, his next move does not need to chase trends. It needs to remove distractions. And the surprising part is that Ross may already possess everything required to make that adjustment. He just has to recognize that his greatest advantage is no longer first-week dominance. It is the empire he built around the music. Rick Ross still has a bigger play. Rick Ross does not need to win the same game he was playing 15 years ago. That may be the biggest lesson hidden inside this entire controversy. His career is no longer built only on album sales. Over the years, Ross expanded his identity into business, branding, real estate, live events, partnerships, and the larger image of being a self-made boss. That brand may now be more valuable than any single opening week total. And that creates an opportunity. Instead of trying to compete with younger artists on the same battlefield, Ross could build a new battlefield around himself. Imagine a rollout that follows him through business meetings, property development, studio sessions, car events, travel, and the process of creating an album while managing everything else attached to his name. That would give younger viewers context. It would show them why Ross matters beyond old chart numbers. It would also reconnect with something that made Maybach Music Group powerful during its strongest years. Excess. Fans once felt like they were being invited into a world. The cars, estudios, mansions, collaboration, backstage footage, and ambition all helped sell the music because the music felt connected to a larger lifestyle. That is what could be rebuilt. Not a copy of the old MMG era, a modern version of it. Ross has the personality to carry long-form content. He has enough business activity to create stories without manufacturing drama. And most importantly, those stories would allow the music to exist inside a world that feels authentic to who he is now. That may be more effective than another interview where the biggest clip is a comment about Drake or 50 Cent. At this stage, Ross does not need more enemies. He needs stronger framing, because when a veteran controls the story around his career, the audience stops asking whether he can recreate the past. They start asking what his next era looks like. And that brings us to the real conclusion. This story was never only about 19 units, streaming reports, or online jokes. It is about how legends survive when the industry changes around them. What this really says about hip-hop. Rick Ross may be the face of this debate, but the lesson goes far beyond one artist. Modern hip-hop has become obsessed with instant judgment. First week numbers drop, and within minutes, fans declare victory or failure. A tour map appears online, and people decide whether an artist is finished. One viral clip spreads, and suddenly an entire career gets reduced to a single moment. That environment creates pressure on everybody. But veteran artists face the hardest version of it, because they are competing against their own history. Rick Ross does not need to prove that he once mattered. The catalog already proves that. The strategic challenge is proving that the current version of Rick Ross still offers something people cannot get anywhere else. That means tightening the music, choosing fewer records with stronger replay value, building a rollout around the album instead of around rivalries, turning business ventures into storytelling, giving fans access to the world behind the artist again, and most importantly, refusing to let every outside conflict hijack the main product. There is also a lesson for hip-hop culture itself. Competition can make rap exciting. Beef can create unforgettable moments. Rivalries can push artists creatively. But when every disagreement becomes permanent tribal warfare, the music suffers. Fans should be able to enjoy Drake and Rick Ross. They should be able to respect 50 Cent's business success while still appreciating Ross's catalog. Supporting one artist should not require automatically hating another. And artists themselves have more to gain by turning competition into better records than endless personal hostility. Ross still has time to reshape this chapter of his career. One album does not erase 20 years. One opening week does not define a legacy. But the next move matters. If he lets the music speak louder than the beef, focuses the vision, and turns his real-life empire into part of the creative story. Set in Stone could eventually be remembered not as the moment Rick Ross fell off, but as the moment he realized he had to play a completely different game. Now I want to hear from you. If you believe Rick Ross can still reinvent this era of his career, come on. If you believe the commercial decline is already too difficult to reverse, come on, dude. Tell us where you're watching from. And if you enjoy deep hip-hop stories like this, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and share this video with another rap fan. The numbers may start the argument, but history decides who was really built to last.